You mentioned something that I want to come back to about how there are times when your opponent is taking up too much time for their
Mhm.
turn, or the games can go on for a while. Can you touch on a bit about the mental and physical endurance involved for Yu-Gi-Oh?
Oh, absolutely. And Yu-Gi-Oh is a very mentally taxing game, especially when you play for large events, because these events can go on for at least 8 to 10 hours a day, and you're waking up like dead early in the morning. Like I'm not an early bird by any stretch. Like if there's not a double digit on the clock, I don't want to wake up. I don't want to wake up with a single digit. But Yu-Gi-Oh makes me wake up around 6:30 in the morning if I want to play a large event, and that's the only exception where I will do it for. And then it takes about like roughly like an hour and a half drive if I want to go to Toronto to play a large event. And those things go on again for 8 to 10 hours. So I would have breakfast on the way there, and then maybe if I don't have lunch, you're not eating food for about 8 to 10 hours. And when you're doing that, like mentally exercising your brain, making all these complex plays, these reads when you're playing this, because again, Yu-Gi-Oh is a very complex game. And when you do that all in conjunction with the amount of time that you haven't eaten food, it can get mentally taxing for you, regardless if you do well or not. And it gets really difficult at that point, so you get a lot of adrenaline that pumps through you throughout the day, that to kind of muscle yourself through and just push through. And that's one thing I like, because I always like putting myself in tough situations, to build myself character, to build myself experience, so that like when the going gets tough, that I'm kind of impervious to it, or I at least have a resistance to it, like, so I don't panic under pressure. It's like that proverb, the cornered rat becomes more dangerous, that the cornered rat becomes more dangerous than the cat. And that's kind of my thing. If you obligate me, if you do something to pressure me or push me to have to do something, then I'll do it, because I'm a horrible procrastinator. So if I don't have the obligation to do it, I probably won't. But when you pressure me to do so, then that's when I'll start probably being at my best at that point.
You and me both. I feel you. So, could you tell me a bit about your Yu-Gi-Oh experiences outside of playing? I believe that you are not only a moderator on the Pojo forums, which was one of the premier card game sites on the web for a long period of time, but you've also judged events, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with Pojo, just to give a quick summary of that, because it kind of divulges into the judging that I did. So I was a moderator on Pojo.com, which was arguably like the biggest Yu-Gi-Oh forum that existed back in the day. This is way before Facebook was invented. And it's funny enough, it originally started out as a Pokemon website, and then Yu-Gi-Oh just kind of took it over as like a message board or forum. So it became very popular then. And again, as you said, one of the biggest ones that was out there, and I was a moderator for it, so I'd be there. My job would be to, like take down like the inappropriate posts or spam, and post threads that were like announcements or whatnot, just kind of help like move the forum along in a sense, and like maybe settle like trade disputes that were happening, because you could also trade cards online, and some people would scam, some people would have problems. I'd be a part of that. It's just for example. And a lot of the forum that I would spend in Pojo would be what we call the Q&A forum, which is also known as like a ruling forum, because Yu-Gi-Oh is a very complex game, and there are so many different cards that interact with each other. So when you get to like certain scenarios, some people don't understand like what actually happens, because there are cards that can contradict each other and could contradict the rules. So that's what the ruling forum is for, to kind of explain what would happen in this case. So because I was so immersed in that ruling forum of Pojo, it kind of gave me the inspiration to decide, maybe I should start judging a little bit, because, judges can be like hit and miss. They can kind of come and go. Like there's always going to be a demand for judges in Yu-Gi-Oh. So I started judging around 2006, roughly 2 or 3 years after I started playing, because that's when I started. I felt that I got more competent in the game. I wasn't like that newbie anymore, or that like I actually understood the game to a very competent level now, where I could actually like compete with the big boys, that kind of level to say. And as I started judging, I would get like more immersed in the rules and got better with the game. And it's also a very mentally taxing position to be in, and it's wholly underappreciated in my mind, because of the pressure that you're under, not from just being a judge and from like your superiors and whatnot, but also from the players as well, because it's like referees in sports. You expect the judges and referees to make the perfect and correct call every single time. But but the time that you don't make one is where you get highly criticized. You could be canceled out. Like there's so many negative repercussions that you can get from just making a wrong call as a judge. And again, like even those wrong calls can of course affect like the integrity of the game, which is what we don't want. And sometimes it's actually happened. Like I've done it before as a judge, and I've also as a player have had judges give me bad rulings that have compromised and the integrity of the game as well. It happens. It sucks. Unfortunately, it human error is a part of the game as well. It's like an umpire in baseball. They're not going to call every strike correctly. They're not going to call every ball correctly when a pitch is thrown. That's normal, but that's part of the game. And sometimes you might have to account for it. It sucks if it happens. It happens. It sucks, but that's unfortunately it's part of the game that it's very difficult to fix, and it's something that like everyone's gonna have to live with. So judges in my mind are very underappreciated, and it's a lot of hard work on their end. It's tough though, but on the other end, they got to try to do their best to keep some accountability in the game as well, and then not to mention, like at least like owe up to the mistakes as well, because that's been a problem, a very common problem that the players kind of believe that the judges do, is that they're not accountable for their when they make mistakes, which is really huge on my part. Is like no, like accountability is huge, and I had a discussion with one of my podcast guests a while ago concerning this, that judges need to take accountability, but also as well like players can't be like too critical of judges, because again like they're only human as well, and it's hard to come across like really good judges as well. Like there are a lot of judges that are like they're okay, that they can be good at some aspects but maybe not in all aspects. And again, we have to take it all in with a grain of salt, because no, not everybody's perfect. We all need to remember that.
I do appreciate the judges because you have to really love the game to watch other people play the game and then focus on what both sides are doing. And yeah, it can be a thankless job, right?
It absolutely is. And after every regional or every event that I play, and I know like a lot of judges that are on staff that are out there, like I go at the end of the day, I'm like, I shake their hand. It's like, thank you for judging, because it is a thankless job, because I've been on both sides of the ball. I've been a judge. I know how stressful it is. I've been a player. I know how stressful it is on that end. So like, I know how it is for both ways. And it's like, thanking the refs in a game. You thank them, because they're taking time out of their day. It's tough on them. There's a lot of pressure on them. And of course, they're making a mistake on like an international stage, as opposed to us just making a mistake on like a regional stage. That's it. So there's a ton of magnitude difference between the two, but the contrasts are still relatively the same, in the sense that it's a bit of a thankless job. I always thank the judges after their hard work, because without them, we wouldn't have the event to begin with, and like that's less of a Yu-Gi-Oh experience I wouldn't be able to have. So I definitely thank them for sure at the end of every event.